This is a panel on digital diplomacy, and I'd like to start with a question for Minister Paula Bogantes Zamora. Can you tell us about how the international community worked with the Costa Rican government after the devastating Conti Group cyber attack in April of 2022? And how important was it to work with key allies in the aftermath of that?
Yes, thank you so much, and thank you everyone for joining us tonight. This is something that Ambassador Fick and I discussed a number of months ago, probably in Costa Rica, and I told them that I was a big fan of CMU and that it would be great if I could participate in our panel. So thanks so much, Ambassador Fick, and thanks so much, CMU, for filling this dream. So I'll give you a little bit of background. Costa Rica went through a very hard cyber attack in April 2022. And it happened during a transition between the previous administration and us coming into the government. So the time wasn't that, it's never a good time to get a cyber attack, but especially when you're transitioning from one administration to the other. So that brought that was a big challenge for us. One of the first things that the president did was he declared the state of emergency. And it was the first time in Costa Rica's history that the country was declared under a state of emergency due to a cyber attack. And he did that in order for us to get assistance faster, have the assistance be able to go in and help us do the forensic analysis and all that, avoiding many permits and a lot of documents that needed to fill out in order for companies or governments to have access to our institutions. There are a number of magazines and industries in the cybersecurity industry that have said that the attack that we went through in 2022 was considered the hardest attack a government endured during that year. We had, as a government, we had to pay $25 million in order for us to gain back some of the data and bring back some of the servers. 9 institutions, government institutions, were affected. We had to reschedule over 158,000 healthcare appointments because the attack hit especially 2 of our dearest institutions. One is the healthcare. There's an institution that oversees the administration of all of our public hospitals, and as you know, Costa Rica has a universal healthcare system, so we invest a lot on healthcare. And the other institution that was heavily attacked was the finance minister. And we had to go back to paper. So that put a lot of stress on finance and healthcare especially. We had sensitive data lost. We were running a number of researches on cancer, and we had been doing so for a number of months, and that information was lost. And just, I will say, one of the biggest loss was not so much the money that we had to put to get that data back, but that we had to stop providing services to Costa Ricans on healthcare. And I think that's where the highest cost was, where we view the highest cost was actually damage our institutions. So we're a country that we don't have an army since 1948, and never in our wildest dream did we ever think that anyone would be interested in us, right? We're no military threat to no one, so why would anyone want to cyber attack Costa Rica? We talk about things that maybe are not of interest of other countries. So this is a wake-up lesson for everybody, for all governments, right? And it certainly was a hard lesson for us to learn. So when the attack happened, a number of countries came to our rescue. One, the United States, Israel also came to our help, Spain, and other countries, opened up to, or they were available to come and help. I have to say that we would have not been able to sustain the damage or to control the damage and to be able to get the data back and bring our services back. It took us 4 months to do that without the help of the United States and without the help of the private industry. We have a number of companies in Costa Rica, US companies, with very sophisticated operations in Costa Rica. IBM being one of them. They have the largest security SOC outside of the US in Costa Rica. So they came to our help. And ever since then, shortly after, the United States confirmed a collaboration of $25 million through the Department of State and $9.8 million through the Department of Defense. And we have been working together ever since then to make sure that we are prepared, that we are protected, that we can monitor our institutions, making sure that this doesn't happen again. And I always say it when I'm talking about this, sure, the money is great. I'm not saying that I'm not thankful, but the thing that has been the best is to be able to collaborate with some of the best agencies on cybersecurity in the world. The knowledge that we've been gaining, the working hand in hand, them letting us, one of the first things we did is we had to have a vulnerability test of the institutions. What's the state of the institutions? How well or not well protected we were. So we had a better idea as to what we needed to build on top of the state of the institutions. So all these processes, then deciding which company we had, which services we had to implement, what strategy we had to implement, all of that has been done with the help of the US. And again, this talks about digital diplomacy, collaboration amongst nations, us leveraging from the knowledge of the United States. And it's been, I hope Ambassador Fick agrees with me to say that it has been a very successful collaboration between Costa Rica and the United States, so much so that now other Latin American countries are coming to us to help, to ask for help, to ask for us to share the knowledge, for us to tell them how we have done it so they can do it the same way. So again, I think it's a great example of digital collaboration, international collaboration, a small economy like Costa Rica leveraging from a huge economy like the US who has a lot of knowledge on something that we were lagging behind, and hopefully we'll be better prepared should another cyber attack happen.
Ambassador Fick, did you want to add anything on that experience?
Just only very briefly that it's very much a two-way street. That I think in these kinds of engagements, the U.S. And our agencies and practitioners on the ground learn as much as we teach. I mean, it really isn't. These are collaborations, and it's not charity. That's really important to understand. These are investments in partners who we need to be strong and capable. And in our hour of need, they're there for us too. Remember, NATO, just to use one example, has invoked Article 5 exactly one time, and that was on September 11th.
Wonderful. Ambassador Wechsler, can you tell us about Switzerland and the role that Switzerland plays with respect to international digital governance and cooperation, and what Switzerland's strategy is in this area?
Thank you very much. And maybe at the outset also I'd like to thank Nathaniel Fick for this invitation. And I told him that I really thought a long time about should I really do this trip. I mean, not only my bow tie is green, but I really think we should travel wisely. And now, after one day in Pittsburgh, my first day in Pittsburgh, I thought it was worth it. And maybe just for three reasons. I went running this morning and I saw this cathedral, and then I learned this is a cathedral for learning. Wow, what a great idea, to build a cathedral of learning in the middle of a city. I mean, congratulations, that's fantastic. And then, we were talking about solidarity and charity, and also between Switzerland and the United States. There's the openness that we have, and the trust that we have has led to so many good gifts and takes. I learned, that our head of the AI center of the ETH in Zurich has made his PhD here at Carnegie Mellon, computer science school. He was our representative in the UN high-level advisory body on AI. I mean, we would have never been able to put a diplomat in there, but because he's a respected scientific leader in that area. So thanks to the university here. But we gave back also something. A young student, Severin Hacker, came here and he co-founded Duolingo. So it's a give and take, and I think that's also what we in a way have to cherish a little bit. That this is how we can learn from each other. I think the strategy also reflects a lot of the core that Nate was also presenting of the US strategy. I mean, we have our four action fields. It's one is cybersecurity, because there was a saying, there's no development without security. I think there's no future development without cybersecurity. So that's really something where we work a lot. You were mentioning the OEWG with the responsible behavior in cyberspace. We launched a Geneva manual about how the private sector can contribute to this, not only the states, but the private sector. We have an action field very much focused on sustainability, because we're convinced that, the digital technology and new technologies, they can probably give the critical contribution also that we can save human life on the planet. Also when we look at what has been agreed now in the UN, the Global Digital Compact, which really focuses everything on how can the digital age also serve all the SDGs that we have adopted. And we have the one action field on digital self-determination, which is a lot on human rights, where we work together with the Freedom Online Coalition. Then the last thing that you were mentioning also was digital governance. I think this is something where we really want to make a service to the international community, that we can offer a place in Geneva where we have more than 50-60% of all norms and standards that we need to have together in order to make this global digital world work are there. And again, it's in Geneva not because we invented it, because at a certain time President Wilson decided that we should have a League of Nations in Geneva, and that later on developed into the UN European, and the seat of a lot of technical organizations. And I think looking into the future, because as you say, the digital technology and new technologies have become so relevant and critical to our daily lives. They're also become, of course, more contested and more, we call maybe geopolitical. I think that's something there where we have to have a space to discuss and debate and not agree, but that at least that we try to understand that we can try to minimize risks and potential problems. And that's what we want to be a platform with the Swiss digital diplomacy. And again, if you want to do this, you have to understand technology. I didn't know 3 years ago what red teaming is. I mean, we know red tape, but but red teaming, you have to understand how that works. Now, one thing, for instance, also where we talked about it, that in AI now, of course, you need data, you need capabilities, but you need compute power. And this needs also public investments that we can offer compute power that not only serves private gadgets or anything which makes your life easier, but also maybe, how can we use this compute power to advance the SDGs? And we're working on a project with the Swiss supercomputer Alps, which is in Switzerland, and the Finnish colleagues who are there. One is called the Lumi, and for those who don't speak Finnish like me, it means snow. So this snow and Alps works very well together, and actually, so then also it's how can we bring these scarce resources that most of is in the hands of private companies, but also the public sector, and then mostly in the hands of universities or research institutions. So that's also a major interest that we want to promote. And I just would like to, I looked it up again. It was a fantastic saying by Albert Einstein, who made his schools in Switzerland, and then because the political circumstances were not as he liked, and he moved to the United States. But he said in 1932 at a diplomatic conference in Geneva, technology advances could have made human life carefree and happy if the development of the organizing power of man had been able to keep step with his technical advances. Instead, the hardly bought achievements of the machine age in the hands of our generation are as dangerous as a razor in the hands of a 3-year-old child. So I think that's something we have now again a task in our generation to make these technologies safe and good for humanity. And that was in 1932, and there has been some developments, but on the large hand, we found ways to deal with very existential, very risky things. And I don't see a reason why we shouldn't be able to bring AI or other emerging, not AI is not emerging technology, it's here, but other emerging that we can organize in a way that it serves us and that we can limit the risk. And I think that's a major challenge for us in diplomacy, that we want to be a major contributor.
I was wondering about the role of digital diplomacy in theory, because it's a relatively recent thing in the history, the long sweep of the history of diplomacy. So from each of your perspectives, where do you see this initiative, this role that you're playing in small form, personally, but also the role that you're playing with respect to your own country, and then the digital solidarity that we're trying to build internationally? Where do you see that in 5 years? If you were to think about yourself in 5 years, or whoever's in that position, what does digital diplomacy and cyberspace solidarity look like in 5 years?
Take a stab. I think our overarching objective is just a mainstream, and a few examples from the State Department for how we're trying to do that. We set an objective almost 2 years ago of having a trained cyber and digital diplomat in every U.S. mission around the world. We've trained now, almost 2 years in, more than 200 of them, so we'll hit that goal by the end of this year. And second example, every year the Foreign Service publishes a list of selection criteria by which career ambassadors will be selected to go take their posts. It's about 5 criteria. And this past cycle, for the first time ever, an understanding of and commitment to cyber and digital issues is one of the 5. And that's a sea change in terms of a signal from the top that it matters. And in hierarchical organizations, you see people begin to adjust their behavior because of it. So I think the goal for us is to, again, mainstream this in our diplomacy.
I think there's a huge opportunity for regions, and I'm going to refer to the Latin America region to take advantage of the times we're living. As I said earlier, before, Latin America now is coming to Costa Rica. Latin American countries are coming to Costa Rica, seeking for advice or help on how are we deploying the cybersecurity strategy. But we're also talking about digital transformation. We're also talking about AI implementation. So 5 years from now, I would like to say that we're a more cohesive region when talking about Latin America. There's huge opportunity for the region to move up to the next level. And we are a strong force, and we should be all moving at somewhat the same speed. And of course, there are countries that will be lagging behind, like Venezuela, Nicaragua, Cuba, the typical countries that are not looking at this the way we are. But I see a change in Latin America where values now are discussed, partners that share the same vision that we are trying to achieve. Costa Rica is viewed in the region as a leader, as an example to follow. And what we're trying to do now is to convey that message and that great story, success story that we have had so far with other Latin American countries. So again, the region is stronger. So the values that we talk about, and this is very important, the values that we talk about are shared amongst other countries. I always like to tell colleagues from other governments, if you had to ask or invite someone to come and live with you for a year, you're going to look at what values that person has, and if they share the same values as you, because you don't want to have a thief living with you, right? So it's the same thing when doing business with other countries. It has to be countries that have the same vision, the same values, that they want to share knowledge, because we are not amongst the leading nations when talking about technology, but we sure can be a great examples of digital implementation. So again, I think this is a great time in history and a great opportunity for the region to become a success story when talking about digital transformation, digital collaboration, etc.
On my morning run, I also saw there's a time capsule in front of the Student Unions building, and that should be opened in 2051. So I was thinking, well, what will the world look like in 2051? President Biden at the General Assembly was saying, hey, 50 years ago, when he started in politics, Vietnam and the US were at war. And now the presidents are meeting in Europe. So a strong, positive message. And I also thought, well, of course, we could imagine many scenarios. And I tried to explain once to a Danish friend what I do. And at the end, he looks at me like, well, actually, what you do, you're bringing people together. Yeah, actually. I mean, if you want to bring it down to one sentence, that's what diplomacy is all about. And it's probably in the digital age even more important, because we don't necessarily need to meet. And I think if in 5 years or in 2051, we can, we talked about passports. I have, Switzerland is not selling passports, but we have this Geneva digital passport, which shows what's happening in Geneva in terms of discussions about digital or new technologies question. We have quantum technology going on. We know in about 10, 20 years, this is gonna work. And we'll have to figure out what do we do with it and how are we preparing for it. Because again, it's gonna be good or bad. You could use it for good or bad. And hopefully, I think we'll have places where we we can discuss and find solutions for this. And that's where we need digital diplomacy and technology to help us solve these problems.
We're all from comparatively advantaged countries, more or less, and there are parts of the world that aren't even connected to the internet. So digital diplomacy is a lot easier to talk about if you're talking about people who have strong infrastructure of digital capabilities. What about those countries that are lacking that kind of infrastructure? How does digital diplomacy work across that kind of a divide if you can't even count on, I mean, never mind cybersecurity, but they may not have access to the internet to begin with. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, when I took this job, I thought that maybe I would go to Washington and have a fancy swearing-in ceremony, and there would be a lot of pomp and circumstance. Yeah, instead I got sworn in by a notary at a UPS store in South Portland, Maine, with a line of people waiting to mail packages behind me who are not amused by what was happening in the front line. And the reason that happened was I had to get to Romania with a diplomatic passport in order to win votes for the election of the Secretary General of the International Telecommunication Union, the ITU, a woman named Doreen Bogdan-Martin. And it was really important that Doreen win that election.
Well done.
Yeah, it worked well, all of us. Really important that she won, because her primary mission is to, one of her primary missions, is to advocate on behalf of, and then try to close the gap for the third of humanity who are still not connected. And so working with her over the last couple of years has been gratifying and frustrating, because it is kind of staggering that we sit here and we talk about all the benefits of advanced technology, and you do it in a place that's as filled with talent and potential as this room, and a third of humanity does not even have a basic connection. So you asked, what do we do about that? I'll give two examples quickly. One is these connectivity projects, like the one in the Pacific. We got 11,400 people closer with Tuvalu, and we'll just keep going and keep doing that. I think the work that Carnegie Mellon is doing in Rwanda is extraordinary in this regard. Africa is the youngest continent in the world, and has the largest connectivity gap in the world. And so the fact that you're extending all of the power and advantage and potential of this place there is exactly the kind of thing that can help us globally with this. The last thing I would say is on AI. Benedikt mentioned the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, the UN's objectives for on key metrics like mortality and agricultural productivity and things. 85 or 88% of those are off track. If there were a CEO of the SDGs in the U.S. economy, that person would have been fired by now. That's a problem. And perhaps the only way to alter the trajectory of the line would be the application of new technologies. So as we're having these AI governance discussions at Bletchley Park or at the G7 or in the OECD, there has to be in parallel a very robust effort to extend the benefits of AI to the rest of the world. And Secretary Blinken hosted an event in New York on Monday aimed at doing exactly that. We had 10 of the leading AI companies on the stage, and used the forcing function of the event to work closely with them on concrete commitments around, really concrete. How many dollars of compute credits, that kind of thing, in order to make these advanced AI systems more accessible to other parts of the world.
I think it's a responsibility from governments to make sure that you are moving ahead with technology. Connectivity, clearly infrastructure is the baseline to that, but the AI is it's bringing a lot of challenges to humanity. and benefits and risks. But the benefits, the fact that a country will not do a proper AI implementation will be detrimental to its economy, because the digital gap or the digital divide then it will be wider. This is something that we know, and it's good to have your boss know this, right? The president of Costa Rica is very much aware of this, which is an advantage. It kind of does my job a little easier. But it is certainly a responsibility for every government to work on this. Ambassador Fick was talking about the population that is not connected. 50% of schools in the world still don't have internet. That's huge. In year 2024, we have indigenous territories in Costa Rica, 10 of them that don't have connectivity. And it's not a matter of infrastructure, because now you have satellite connectivity. So it's a government decision that needs to be made. It's not even lack of funds. It's a government decision that needs to be made. Trust me, you will find the funds. So it is imperative for governments to work towards moving with this digital transformation. We non-speaking English countries have the challenge that AI speaks English. And not until it starts talking other languages, we have to learn English so we can take advantage of AI. But we also have to talk about cross-border data flows. How are we going to do it? Because one thing is for us to look at what we're doing, but we will not take advantage of technology until we start sharing data amongst countries and analyzing data and working on public policies to make that digital transformation or adapting countries to that digital transformation better. So again, I think it is not just connectivity, but it is leveraging the connectivity, leveraging technology, taking advantage of AI and many other technologies to make sure that you're not lagging behind the transformation that other nations are leading the way.
You know, it's very often also maybe an excuse of some governments to say, oh no, we cannot do this. Because for them it's dangerous. It's an equalizer. It's democratizing access to knowledge, to information, which for certain governments is not wishful. They would like to shut down the internet whenever they want. And I think that's one part also that, you know, I think also that we work together very hard in the Freedom Online Coalition. Because the technology, the infrastructure is one thing, but also then the political will, you know, to let that happen. And, you know, you mentioned ITU, they do a fantastic job together with UNICEF and the GIGA initiative to bring every school in the world to the internet. And I also think it's sometimes we underestimate the leapfrogging potential. Even if they get a little bit of connectivity, I mean the effect is gigantic. And I think it's also the challenge to find the appropriate ways of connectivity so that it's the right measure for the kind of development they need. And you don't maybe need the supercomputer everywhere, but at least really some good basic access. And I think there again, that's a little bit one thing I took away from my time in the Silicon Valley is that the tech companies are not yet always as conscious of their role of providing an infrastructure and not just a service or a product. And you know, that's also brought me something sometimes to think about what kind of governance. When you look at some of the organizations that are actually the only organization which still exists from the time of the League of Nations is the International Labour Organization. And because they had a very innovative governance model at that time, because they were saying, if we want to really improve the situation of the workers in the world, it's not enough that we governments sit together and make a treaty and then what happens. So we need to have the trade unions and the employers around the table. And so they form a tripartite council that we only together can improve the situation of the workers in the world. And I think we probably need in the future some formats where we can bring also the tech companies, the private sector, more into building this infrastructure in an equitable way. Because like in Switzerland, when the railways came up, if you were in a valley where there was no railway, there was no more economic development. People had to go away. And I think that's going to happen in the future when you don't have connectivity or when you don't have access to some basic AI tools, because you need that like your phone. And I think that's it is the connectivity. I think has a lot of sub issues that we have to tackle.
Well, I'm afraid that we've come to the end of the time that we had available, but I just wanted to say that I find each of you incredibly inspiring. It is difficult to serve in government. Public service is challenging. The salaries are not competitive to many of the tech companies that we're all familiar with. The bureaucracy is quite difficult. Oftentimes government lags behind problems. But what I'm hearing today is so inspiring because it's so heartwarming and frankly deeply encouraging to know that we have folks like the three of you that can see the vision of where we need to go and are laying out a pathway that we can all see too. So I want to really thank you for everything that you're doing for your own country and for digital solidarity amongst us and for the future of the world. And also from a personal sense, I want to thank you for coming here to Carnegie Mellon University. We try to solve problems, and I can see that on that note, you are all kindred spirits in that regard. So thank you, and thank all of you for being here this evening.